The house was quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fireplace. Outside, the evening sky had melted into shades of purple and gold, and the last birds of the day were settling into their nests. Inside, Sarah sat in her favorite armchair, a worn quilt draped over her knees, and stared at the flames. There was something comforting about the firelight, a warmth that wrapped around her like a gentle hug. She often came to this spot when the house was empty, when the quiet stretched long enough for her thoughts to find her. Some evenings, she would close her eyes and imagine a different life, one filled with laughter she hadn't heard in years, or adventures she had always dreamed of but never dared to take. Those were her secret moments, ones she never shared with anyone, not even her closest friends. Sarah's grandson, Ethan, usually visited on weekends, bringing his energy and chatter to every corner of the house. But tonight, he wasn't here yet. She found herself thinking of him, of how quickly he had grown, and a soft smile crept across her face. There was a kind of hope she held for him, one she had tucked away for herself long ago. The fire flickered, casting shadows across the room, and Sarah's mind wandered. She thought about the small joys she sometimes overlooked, the smell of coffee in the morning, the gentle hum of the old clock in the hallway, the way the sun lit the kitchen just right in the afternoon. These little moments were quietly beautiful, but they could never replace the connection she longed for. Sarah's heart had room for more than just memories. She had dreams she'd never voiced aloud, hopes that still shimmered faintly even in the middle of ordinary days. A quiet wish to share her thoughts, to be understood, to feel a sense of closeness that went beyond polite conversation. Sometimes, she felt the weight of loneliness pressing gently against her chest, a soft ache that was both familiar and strange. Just as she let herself sink deeper into these feelings, the front door creaked softly. Sarah's head lifted instinctively. There he was, Ethan, her grandson, holding his backpack, cheeks flushed from the autumn air. His presence filled the room like sunlight spilling into a dim corner, and Sarah's heart lifted, a small, unexpected flutter of joy. "Hi, Grandma," Ethan said, his voice bright but slightly hesitant. He set down his bag and kicked off his shoes, glancing at the fire as if it were an old friend. "Hi, sweetheart," Sarah replied, rising to hug him. There was a warmth in his arms that reminded her of all the years she had spent nurturing him, watching him grow and feeling quietly proud of the young man he was becoming. They settled near the fire, Sarah with her quilt and Ethan with a mug of hot chocolate. The room smelled faintly of cocoa and pine from the little tree they had kept near the hearth. Sarah watched Ethan as he stirred his drink absent-mindedly, his gaze distant. Something in his eyes caught her attention, a seriousness, a secret tucked behind the usual youthful brightness. She leaned slightly closer. "Is everything okay, Ethan?" she asked softly. Ethan hesitated, and the pause stretched longer than she expected. Sarah felt a familiar stir of curiosity and concern, mixed with the quiet thrill of knowing that sometimes children held thoughts and feelings far deeper than anyone realized. There was a story behind that glance, a secret he hadn't spoken aloud. Sarah's own heart seemed to echo the anticipation she saw in his eyes. She had learned over the years that some truths arrived slowly, in small, quiet moments, rather than shouted from rooftops. Perhaps tonight would be one of those moments. Perhaps this evening by the fire would bring something unexpected, a connection, a revelation, a memory they would both carry with them. The flames reflected softly in Ethan's eyes, and Sarah felt a gentle tightening of hope in her chest. She realized that life's most profound moments often came when she least expected them, wrapped in simplicity and stillness. And as the night deepened and shadows danced on the walls, she silently promised herself that she would listen, truly listen, if Ethan chose to share whatever secret he carried. The fire crackled again, a comforting, familiar sound, and Sarah felt a sense of anticipation she hadn't known she was missing. She sipped her tea and leaned back, watching her grandson, waiting patiently, heart open to the unspoken stories that were about to unfold. And in that quiet, glowing room under the gentle warmth of the firelight, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. A quiet, thrilling hope that life still held beautiful surprises. She was willing to notice them as the fire flickered softly in the living room. Sarah found her mind drifting back to another time. Another life, one that felt both distant and alive in her memory. It was the spring of her early 20s, a time when the world seemed full of possibilities and quiet longing. She remembered the little cafe on the corner of Maple Street, a place where she often went after long afternoons at the library. The smell of coffee and warm bread had mingled with the soft chatter of patrons, and sunlight had spilled through the tall windows, painting the wooden tables in gold. That was where she first noticed him, Daniel. He had been sitting at a small table near the window, scribbling in a notebook, completely absorbed in his own world. Sarah had felt a curious pull toward him, a mix of admiration and gentle intrigue. She didn't know why, but something about the way he paused to smile at a stranger, or the way his eyes lingered on the pages of his notebook, made her heart lift ever so slightly. Over the weeks that followed, their paths began to cross more often. Sometimes it was a shared smile when their hands brushed over a coffee cup. Other times it was a fleeting hello, exchange while waiting in line. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations, just small, meaningful moments that left a quiet echo in her heart. Sarah remembered the day they finally spoke. It had been raining lightly, the streets glistening with puddles that reflected the grey sky. She had ducked into the cafe to escape the drizzle. And there he was, seated by the window as always. This time, their eyes met, and he offered a shy smile. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. "Not at all," she replied, feeling a flutter of excitement she didn't fully understand. They spent hours talking that day, discovering shared interests in books, music, and the little joys of life that often went unnoticed. The conversation flowed as easily as the rain outside, and Sarah felt something awaken in her, a hope, a quiet longing she hadn't realized had been waiting all along. But life, as it often does, had a way of intervening. Daniel had been preparing to move to another city for work, and Sarah had commitments that kept her rooted in her own town. They promised to stay in touch, to write letters and call when they could, that the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months. Slowly, distance grew between them, not from lack of care, but from the quiet pressures of life and timing. Yet even as years passed, the memories remained vivid. Sarah could still picture the sunlight on Daniel's notebook, the gentle curve of his smile, and the warmth that had filled the small cafe. She often caught herself replaying those moments in her mind, remembering the way the world had seemed softer, brighter, and more full of possibility whenever he was near. Sometimes she wondered if he remembered those moments too, or if they had faded like so many other fragments of youth. The nostalgia was bittersweet, sweet for the connection she had felt, and bitter for the distance that life had imposed. But it was in that bittersweetness that Sarah discovered a quiet strength. Those memories reminded her that her heart was capable of feeling deeply, of holding on to hope and of treasuring small, beautiful moments even when life moved on. As she sat by the fire now, she realized how much those days had shaped her. They had taught her patience, the value of genuine connection, and the quiet power of unspoken understanding. Even the simplest smiles and shared glances had left a lasting imprint, shaping the way she approached her own relationships and the love she gave to those around her. Ethan stirred beside her, breaking her reverie, and Sarah glanced at him with a soft smile. In his presence she saw echoes of her younger self, the same curiosity, the same quiet longing for connection. She wondered if, like her, he was holding small dreams and unspoken wishes close to his heart, waiting for the right moment to share them. The fire crackled again, filling the room with a gentle rhythm, and Sarah felt the past and present blend seamlessly. Memories of Daniel's quiet smile mingled with the warmth of Ethan's laughter, creating a sense of continuity, a reminder that life's emotional moments, however fleeting, left lasting imprints on the heart. And as she watched her grandson, she realized that some stories were meant to wait for the right moment, some confessions for the right ears. The past had shaped her, yes, but it had also prepared her to listen, to understand, and to cherish the moments unfolding right before her eyes. The evening deepened, and the firelight flickered gently across the room. Sarah felt a sense of quiet anticipation, a feeling that something tender and meaningful was about to be shared, a story waiting to be revealed, a heart opening slowly, just as hers had long ago. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the living room windows, catching the dust motes in the air like tiny golden sparks. Sarah sat by the fire again, though the embers had cooled overnight. She was tidying a few things, preparing for another quiet day, when she heard a familiar voice at the door. "Grandma, are you here?" Ethan's voice was bright, but there was something in his tone that made Sarah pause. She opened the door and found him standing there, holding a folded envelope. His cheeks were flushed from the crisp morning air, and his eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and hesitation. "Hey, Ethan," she said softly, stepping aside to let him in. "What's that you've got there?" He shifted nervously, glancing at her, then at the envelope. "It's something I wanted to show you. Can we sit by the fire again?" Sarah smiled and gestured toward the familiar chairs. "Of course. Let's sit." As they settled down, Sarah noticed a small change in Ethan. There was a quiet confidence in the way he held himself, a maturity that had grown over the years. Yet there was still the same warmth and curiosity in his eyes, the same gentle way he observed the world around him. It reminded her of her own past, of someone she had once felt a connection with, long ago, through small gestures and shared moments. "Grandma," Ethan began, his voice catching slightly. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. I wanted to tell you something important." Sarah leaned forward instinctively, her heart opening to him as it always did. "You know you can tell me anything, Ethan." For a moment, he seemed to wrestle with his words, as if choosing them carefully from a delicate treasure chest inside him. "It's about school, and something I've been trying for a long time." He held up the envelope. "I auditioned for the school play. I was scared to tell anyone, but I got a part." Sarah's eyes softened, and a small smile spread across her face. "Ethan, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. I know how much courage it took to try, and even more to tell me." Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, and a shy smile appeared. "Thanks, Grandma. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I thought maybe I'd fail, or that people wouldn't understand why it mattered to me." Sarah reached over and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I understand, Ethan. What matters is that you tried, that you followed your heart. That's the bravest thing anyone can do." For a moment, they sat in silence, letting the warmth of the fire fill the space between them. Sarah felt a wave of nostalgia, remembering her own younger days' moments of hope and hesitation, of quiet courage that changed the course of life in small but meaningful ways. She realized that these feelings had quietly returned through her grandson, connecting past and present in a tender, unspoken way. Ethan looked at her, eyes wide and earnest. "There's something else," he admitted, almost whispering. Sarah's heart leaned in, gentle curiosity sparkling in her gaze. "Tell me," she encouraged, her voice soft. I've been nervous to tell my friends, but I really admire someone, he said, cheeks warming slightly. I just didn't know how to say it. Sarah felt the same quiet flutter in her chest she had felt so many years ago, in her own experiences of admiration and unspoken connection. She smiled gently, her eyes meeting his in a way that said more than words could. Ethan, it's perfectly natural to feel nervous. What you're feeling is brave, and it's part of learning about yourself and the people you care about. He nodded, a mixture of relief and lingering worry in his eyes. I guess. I just wanted to share it with you first. You always know what to say. Sarah's heart warmed. She realized that life had a way of bringing people together, of repeating lessons and gentle truths in new forms. The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth in her chest, a tender reminder that connection and understanding could bridge the years, the distance, and even the quiet hesitations of the heart. The afternoon sun shifted across the room, and they both fell into a comfortable silence, watching the shadows dance along the walls. Sarah thought about how much she had learned from her own past about hope, patience, and the courage to share feelings, and how she could now pass those lessons to Ethan in this quiet, intimate way. When he finally spoke again, it was with a quiet certainty that filled her heart with pride. Thanks, Grandma, for listening. I feel lighter somehow. Sarah reached out to brush a strand of hair from his face. I'm always here for you, Ethan. Always. No matter what, you can share anything with me. That's what family is for. And as the fire flickered once more, casting soft light on their faces, Sarah realized that the moment was not just about words spoken, but about hearts quietly reconnecting. The past and present met in that room, and old emotions had returned in the most gentle, reassuring way through warmth, understanding and love that transcended time. The fire had dwindled to soft glowing embers, and the room was bathed in a gentle warmth that felt like a quiet embrace. Sarah and Ethan sat side by side, the envelope between them untouched for a moment, as if waiting for the right words to be spoken. The weight of anticipation was calm, but present a soft pause in the rhythm of life, where hearts could speak more than voices ever could. Ethan drew a deep breath, his fingers tracing the edge of the envelope nervously. Grandma, he began, his voice steady but thoughtful. I wanted to tell you, the person I admire, it's not just someone from school. It's someone who inspires me, who makes me want to be better. Sarah nodded, her heart gentle and encouraging. She had learned through her own life that these moments, the quiet confessions, the small revelations, were the ones that shaped character and courage. Go on, Ethan. Tell me who it is, she said softly. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then opened the envelope. Inside was a small, carefully written note, describing a simple truth. The admiration he felt had been for a friend who had always been kind to him, someone who made ordinary days brighter without even realizing it. Ethan looked at Sarah, his eyes wide with a mix of hope and vulnerability. I wanted to tell them, but I didn't know how, he admitted. Sarah smiled warmly. You've already done the hardest part, Ethan, sharing it with someone who cares for you. That's how courage grows. And now you have a choice. You can decide when and how to share your feelings with them, in your own way, when it feels right. He nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. For a moment the room was quiet, filled only with the soft crackle of the fire. Sarah could see the weight of decisions and possibilities reflected in his young eyes, and it reminded her of her own experiences long ago, the moments of hesitation before speaking one's heart, the quiet uncertainty of timing, and the profound relief of finally being understood. I think I'll wait a little, Ethan said after a pause, his voice calm but confident. I want to make sure I do it the right way, Not rushed, but honestly. I think they'll understand if I take my time. Sarah reached over and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. That's wise, Ethan. Being thoughtful and patient is just as important as being brave. Life teaches us that timing matters, that honesty always finds its way. A smile slowly spread across Ethan's face, and for the first time that evening, his shoulders seemed completely at ease. Sarah felt a swell of pride and quiet joy. He had faced his fear, spoken his truth, and chosen a path that reflected thoughtfulness and respect lessons she had hoped to pass on but never expected to witness so clearly. They sat in companionable silence, watching the firelight flicker across the room. Sarah thought about her own past, the young days with Danielle, the quiet hopes that had once filled her heart. Those memories now felt like gentle whispers, reminding her that life's truths, whether spoken or unspoken, were never wasted. They shaped who we were, who we could be, and the love and understanding we could share with others. Ethan glanced up at her, a thoughtful smile touching his lips. Grandma, thank you for listening. I think I understand myself a little better now. Sarah's eyes softened, and she squeezed his hand gently. That's all I could ever hope for, Ethan, to help you see the courage and honesty you carry inside. Life is full of choices, some quiet, some loud, but everyone matters in its own way. And sometimes, the most meaningful moments come not from grand gestures, but from speaking and listening with care. The fire crackled once more, a gentle soundtrack to the evening's calm. Outside, the first stars of the night appeared in the sky, twinkling like tiny reminders that the world was vast, full of wonder, and filled with opportunities to connect and care. Sarah and Ethan sat together, hearts aligned in understanding, feeling the quiet satisfaction that comes from trust, honesty, and love expressed in its simplest, purest form. As the night deepened, Sarah reflected on how much growth could occur in small, gentle moments. Courage was not always loud. Love was not always dramatic. Sometimes it was the quiet listening, the thoughtful guidance, and the willingness to be present for someone else that left the deepest mark on a heart. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a soft smile lingering on his face. I feel lighter now, he whispered, almost to himself. Sarah smiled, her own heart full. And that, my dear Ethan, is what happens when you speak your truth and take a thoughtful step forward. Life may not always be simple, but it is always meaningful when we approach it with honesty, care, and respect. The fire's glow faded into the gentle shadows of the room, leaving behind warmth, quiet understanding, and a sense of hope. And in that moment, both Sarah and Ethan knew that no matter what the future held, they had shared something lasting: the courage to speak, the patience to listen, and the quiet joy of hearts opening with love and trust.